Ask Reddit by Whitney Westmoreland. What's something that happened on a first date that made you decide against a second date? He used his pocket knife to cut me a slice of cake, and later scraped some dirt clumps off of his shoe with the same knife. I asked him if he ever cleaned his knife, and he replied, no. Why? He also confessed that he was madly in love with me the same day. We had just met. I am madly in love with you, and we have never met. Love at first post. One was the time I took this girl to dinner and she could not stop staring at our waiter. I'll grant her one thing, I'm a guy and can admit this guy was probably totally hot for anyone who prefers men. Square-jawed and muscled college athlete type. I get it. But I didn't appreciate that she literally craned her neck every time the kitchen door swung open to see if he was walking out. Eventually I gave her enough cash to pay for my part of the meal, told her I'd noticed, as though I couldn't have, suggested to her that she could get his contact info when she paid the bill, and left. Edit. Thanks for the awards everyone. This was a first date I hadn't thought about in decades and now I get awards for it at least. Cheers everyone. And may all your first dates go more smoothly. Bro wingman for another bro on his own date. The next bro awards will feature you. He got us pulled over, car was searched and he had a brick of coke in the trunk. I almost got arrested. He finally vouched this was a blind date and I was innocent. I mean, sounds like even if you wanted to there couldn't be a second date, lol. He tried to change my order with the waitress because I didn't order what he'd recommended. I went out to dinner with a guy. I ordered my steak medium rare after he ordered his well done. Suddenly I was making him look less manly, somehow, with my preference on steak. He changes his order to match mine and then bitches all night about how well done is better. Dude, just get it however you freaking want. I picked her up and she asked me if we could stop by her mom's house so she could run in and grab something. I said sure. Made the stop. She went inside. 5 minutes later she comes out hustling towards the car with a car seat and her mom chasing after her yelling. She opens the car door and throws the car seat, which I now see has a baby in it, and starts yelling at me to drive. I freaked and just turned my car off and took the keys out of the ignition. Her mom called the cops and they came and questioned all of us for a good while. Turns out she had lost custody due to drug use and was trying to use me as a way to get her kid back. We never made it to dinner and I just went home after the cops left. That's some great instincts. My dumbass would have started driving in a panic response and would have realized what was going on like 10-15 minutes after that threshold had been crossed. Went to dinner with a girl who I'd been crushing on for quite some time. It seemed to be going well, and we ended up back at her place, watching a movie or something. Out of nowhere, her boyfriend, of whom I was not aware, came back from out of town and stopped in unexpectedly. He and I had a super awkward conversation for a few minutes, then the two of them disappeared into another room for a minute or two. She came back and said something to the effect of, "I don't have a place for you." I'm sorry, I just kind of got in my car and drove home, with one of the strangest feelings that I'd ever felt. At some point, a few minutes into the journey, I couldn't contain myself and busted out laughing. I had a sort of similar experience. I met a girl on a dating app way back in the day and we ended up playing pool with her sister. About an hour in, my date starts chatting up a guy at the pool hall that she apparently knew. They disappear for a bit and the sister comes up to me and sticks her tongue in my mouth. I leave and go to tell my date this isn't going to work and she is outside making out with the dude she was talking to. To this day I don't know if her sister trying to make out with me was to cover for her. The guy told me he would still be together with his kid's mum if she had apologized for what she did wrong. Out of curiosity I asked what she did wrong. Was expecting something like she cheated, yeah no, something that actually needed apologizing for. Nope. Apparently she kept nagging one day and wouldn't shut up, so he tied her to a computer chair and went out for 3 hours and left her there. I said it doesn't sound like she was the one who needed to apologize and left. Oh my god. She took her hands off the wheel and said, "You think I'm crazy?" I literally jumped out at the next light. One time I was arguing with her ex-friend while they were driving. They slammed the brakes in the middle of the freeway, bringing us to a dead halt. Scared me so bad that she was willing to risk dying to prove a point. Can't win against that. This story is always fun to tell. Basically, we got back to her place after dinner and were getting slightly freaky on the couch. As things started escalating, she pulls out a giant glass jar, like the ones with the finger loop thing that pirates put rum in, half full of a clear liquid. My dumbass asked her if it was moonshine or vodka or something. She then proceeds to explain to me that it's pure GHB and that she has a fetish about getting drugged off of it before having sex, and she said that with a completely serious face. For those of you who don't know, GHB is a date rape drug. She then went to the restroom and I noped out of there so fast that I practically levitated off the couch. Never spoke to her again. That is a lot of GHB to have on hand. She kept writing to her friends on WhatsApp a play-by-play of the date instead of listening to me, so I stood up, paid my dinner and left because I found it disrespectful. Laugh. That's one of those things you have to laugh about later. Maybe much later. It reminds me of some silly sitcom, where the guy was loudly narrating his own life, until his wife had enough of his observations about her aging, once sparkling eyes, and smacked him. He told me that he'd been kicked out of his church for being caught in bed with an underage girl, but it totally wasn't what it looked like. Happened to my sister, but found out the guy had the same uncommon last name as her. Then when she asked where he was from, it was the same small town that our great-grandparents are from. They awkwardly laughed and just immediately ended the date. Her cat called me daddy. This is some depressing stuff. Told me that aliens cause jet lag and that I have the ghost of a fisherman following me around named Samuel, on top of the 20 other batshit things she said at dinner. This was last night. Who is Samuel? Have you tried to talk to him? Maybe he's using his mysterious fish magic to guide you to boat you need. Deleted. WTF, explain please. He just kept making a weird amount of jokes about tapeworms. Edit. Wow. Thanks for the upvotes. Also, this happened while we were eating sushi, just in case anyone was wondering. Hahaha. WTF? I'm now picturing like a bunch of tapeworms in a trench coat trying to work their way up to telling their date the truth. She clicked her fingers at the waitress. Stunning but vapid af. EWW, fuck anyone who does that. He insisted on paying for our dinner instead of going Dutch, and then totally stiffed the server. I tried to leave a tip and he got pissed at me because he was paying and it was his decision to tip or not. I had this happen to me once too, and after he got offended I just waited till the server came back and personally handed her my cash. He was furious. Like, WTF dude? He referred to every woman as a cunt, and we aren't in a country where that is common and harmless. His ex was a cunt, his aunt was a cunt, some random author he was telling me about for some reason was a cunt, etc. Cunt doesn't really bother me, but the way he said it was very aggressive and angry. After that he decided to argue with me about sports and politics and berate me for my choices in those areas. No need for a second date after that. Contrary to popular belief, we do not use cunt to refer to women in the day-to-day in Australia. Being told. The welts on my crotch aren't contagious. He's rubbed for her pleasure. He told me his 14-year-old cousin seduced him when he was 21. And it was somehow her fault he molested her because she was asking for it, and she knew he hadn't had any in a long time. And he had recently been released from prison for it. There's that Norm Macdonald bit about Bill Cosby where someone says about the hypocrisy of Cosby and his wholesome image, that's the worst part, and Norm says, I disagree. I thought the worst part was all the raping. I have that same feeling here, where I kind of want to go, the worst part is that he thinks this is a solid defense of himself. I was newly out, and I had had a crush on her for ages, so when she asked me out I was so excited. She was pretty, smart, very laid back, and had a great sense of humor, so things were going great initially. End of the date comes around, and she very casually drops the bomb on me that she's involved in an open investigation for vehicular manslaughter. She even hinted that it was purposeful and did not seem regretful. That was the end of that. Whoa, fucking whiplash on that one. Went on a date with a woman from the office. Thought we had good chemistry and got along well. She couldn't find her phone, so I tried calling it and someone from the restaurant answered. I went back in for her to get it and the waiter showed me I was saved in her contacts under free food. I'll never understand someone that has that low of self-worth and the time to do it, to go on a fake date to get some free food. Nothing obvious or overt, but from the minute we sat down to eat, the hair on the back of my neck stood up and I felt unsafe. He was polite, listened, very polished, but could not shake that feeling. I drove to the restaurant to meet, so he did not know where I lived. After dinner he asked for another date and I just said no, I don't think we are a good match. Gave him money to pay for my half, said goodbye when I got to the door, turned around and he was staring at me with an expression I never hope to see again. I ran to my car, moved it to another spot, and waited until he left before I left so he could not follow. Restaurant was on an isolated road, so that was safer than having him catch up to me. Found out about a year later he was sent to prison for the assault and rape of 2 different women. It happened on first dates. Never used a dating site again. You did an excellent job picking up those vibes and listening to your gut. She asked if I could clean her pet rat cage or hold her rat while she cleans it. Also listed a number of handyman tasks she needed me to tackle. Oh god. I befriended this fucking hot burlesque dancer. Things turned to flirting. One night she invites me to hers. I get to meet her ferret. Cool, cool. Thing bites. Okay, no worries. This girl initiates the making out, but all the time this fucking ferret is running around and keeps nipping at me. Mostly it's catching my clothes, which was fucking annoying because I used to really like dressing up and finding clothes for my super skinny frame was really difficult. It nipped me a couple of times, enough to draw blood. I ask if we can put the ferret away, not a euphemism, and I'm told no. Continue with the making out, but I just can't get into it with the distraction. Plus if things were to run their course as predicted, I'd be naked with this fucking thing nipping me, and that was not a risk I was willing to take. My god, she was so fucking hot. She acted like I was the weird one, and it was one of those eye-opening times where I was reminded just how desperate some men are to get laid, and what they will put up with to achieve it. The girl who spent the first half of the dinner date talking about her irritable bowel syndrome and then switched to her love for God after the main course. He was super pushy about me having a third drink and got mad when I refused. Eater, I totally see why lots of people are replying saying he probably drugged my drink, but I do not think that is the case, as I never left either of my first 2 beers unattended and he had been pestering me to order a third beer, which is what I refused. I am fairly sure he was trying to get enough drinks into me to lower my inhibitions, not to drug me himself, but regardless his behavior was inappropriate and a huge red flag. The fact that he got angry when I refused to drink more was the reddest flag. She looked nothing like her photos. Smelled of cat piss covered taquitus. We were at a park and saw some girls playing softball and she said those girls look special ed with those helmets. Like fuck, I'm always down to give someone a chance, but just yikes. I made an excuse to leave. My car smelled for like 2 days after that. Cat piss covered taquitus. I can smell that through the phone. She wouldn't stop going on and on about how much she wanted a baby. Called it her little creation and how she wanted multiple. Tried to convince me to come back to her place for some fun. I dropped her off and dipped right away. She texted me every now and then after trying to meet up again. Hell nah. How long ago was that? Her kids are either certainly already involved in the Raised by Narcs sub or they will be in the near future. Shit. He threw a temper tantrum because the restaurant he wanted to go to was closed due to the tropical storm that was going on. Sad because I was having a great time walking around Manhattan while the storm raged. I had every intention on going home with him, until tantrum. We went to her place to watch movies and we chose Kung Fu Panda 2. From the moment it began she proceeded to cackle at every single joke. Anything that could even be perceived as mildly funny set her off like the Wicked Witch of the West. I know some people have interesting laughs and that wouldn't be so bad if it wasn't constant from beginning to end. After that she put on Iron Man and same thing, which cackling the entire movie. There's a point in the movie where a character's phone goes off and the ringtone is an old Iron Man theme which made me chuckle, at which she turns to me and says, "You laugh at all the weirdest parts." The second the movie was over I got out of there and did not see her again. Holy fuck, the "you laugh at all the weirdest parts" comment would have made me so irrationally angry lol. The date felt more like a job interview to fill a position, rather than an actual date. He gave off a vibe of someone who wasn't into getting to know me as a person, but just listed his wants and needs. So at the end of the date, he asked how I thought it went and I said I didn't feel a click match. And he said, yeah, he was missing the wow factor. So I laughed my ass off, slightly offended, in the car home. Gosh, no idea I was auditioning for a contest. I was happy we only went for drinks, but even that felt a bit too long. Gotta work on the wow factor. Gotta show him your talents. Juggling flaming chainsaws perhaps? Or just a neat button. Took her to dinner and then took her to late night car meet. Upon arriving to the meet, she started shit with several other girls she had beef with in high school. And hasn't talked to since high school. We were well into our 20s. She was even older than me. I don't get how some people make high school beef their entire personality for years. I actually ran into a guy I got into a fight with in high school. This was this past year but school was 20 years ago. We acknowledged we knew each other and that we had been in a fight. Both agreed we were idiots back then and no hard feelings were had. Turns out he was the owner of the hobby shop I was in and cut me a really good deal on my purchase because it was for my son's birthday. He was excited I was supporting my kid's hobby and we talked for about a half hour. No need to drag past drama all the way through life. One time I went on a date with a girl and during the date she starts talking about future plans with me. She was talking about how we are going to have kids together and how we were going to go on trips with my brother and his wife. I was in my mid-20s and had just started my career when this happened, so of course this freaked me out. Who jumps to those kind of conclusions during the first date? It was super awkward after because she worked with my mom and kept asking about me. Wow, so odd. I had almost the same experience just a couple of days ago. Guy immediately grills me about my past relationships. Totally overshares about his ex-wife and their kid and co-parenting, even after I told him I never want kids and don't want to be anyone's mom. Then he tells me we'd be perfect as a couple except I live too far away. Then starts planning future visits where he can stay at my place. I noped right out of there so fast. He kept texting me after and I finally had to just be super straight like, sorry dude but this ISN. T gonna work out and you should go date other women. She showed up drunk to a casual daytime first date, at a bar I frequented heavily. Proceeded to order a premium Skinny Rocks margarita and downed it. Ordered a second one. Conversation was all over the place, I was pretty much done. I went to the bathroom, came back, she had another margarita being served. She went to the bathroom after that and the bartender, who I was pretty cool with, flat out asked me, "Sevast, bro, is she your date?" When she ordered the third one I said she needed to slow down. She told me it's okay, you were paying and you drive her home. I told him I'm going to bounce. If she doesn't pay her tab text me and let me know so I can pay it later. He was cool with that. So I left. She did pay her tab. She randomly texted me a few days later and asked if I was doing okay. I did not respond. Hey, at least she paid her tab. The date was going great but we were talking about family, friends, and all that and I realized that I'd slept with her sister. I didn't really know what to do but you can't just say oh your family looks fun and I slept with your sister not too long ago. Show me more pics of your dog, is she a lab mix? I cut the date short after dinner and hoped it'd just fizzle out, but they found out. It was cool though, just an awkward coincidence. The one comment where it's not the date's fault. We finally got it. He was making suggestions for what he thought we should be doing right there in the restaurant that was so inappropriate that the random couple sitting at the next table over asked me if I needed a safe ride home, during one of the numerous times he left the dining room. It was an I was home by 9 PM. He was clearly desperate to put a ring on anyone's finger. Intensely overly romantic despite not knowing me really at all. Put on Etta James Sunday kind of love. Date was a Sunday BTW, and tried to sing it at me while looking excessively earnest into my eyes. He was also in the military and we were both like 19. Go figure. Guys who are married are often eligible to get off base housing. That's probably why he wanted to get married ASAP. Said you're a really good kisser Amber. My name is Ashley. Calm down Amanda. You aim as always get worked up. She stuck her pet snake in her vagina. I wish I was making this up. Forcibly kissed after I said no. I went on a breakfast date once. Date orders 2 sunny side up eggs. Proceeds to take 2 straws, poke one in each yolk and suck the yolk up. Don't even remember his name. Okay, I'm sorry and I would have reacted the same way. But that's objectively funny AF. LMAO. He asked me how big my baby was and if I birthed him vaginally or had a C-section. His explanation was that he'd never slept with a mom before and had heard a baby can stretch out a vagina. I excused myself to the bathroom and promptly left the restaurant. Female anatomy needs to be further explored in health class. The waitress was a lovely young black woman. He referred to her as being attractive for a colored. He touched her, which is not okay. You don't touch your waitress. Made aggressive looks at another table where a family was dining. They were what looked to be Indian, and commented loudly that they were what was wrong with America. Had multiple tequila shots. His cologne stank to high heaven. I was so embarrassed. I was raised to be patient and polite, but finally I was like, WTF am I doing still here? I stood up and left, leaving my half-eaten meal on the table. He yelled insults at me as I was leaving, then when I was out the door texted me. Pure trash. JFC, I would have headed for the door as soon as attractive for a colored left his mouth. What a foul excuse for a human being. On a first date I met him at a barcade. He was already drunk. Lied about his age. Lied about his weight. Lied about his height. The pics on his dating profile were from 4 years ago. Lied about having kids. Said I didn't have to worry about meeting his kids since he's not involved in their lives at all. Told me we should rent a hotel so he can stretch that bussy out, told him no and he called me a FT. She showed up with her friend, okay, I guess, already buzzed, and offered me weed. Admitted that she wasn't divorced about 30 minutes into it. Had me take her to a dance club where she promptly fucked off for 20 minutes to talk to someone. She was a regular, I found out, and knew everyone. I drove her back to her car and told her to get out. I walked into the guy's house and there was Nazi shit all over his place, not in a collector kind of way but in a crazy kind of way. There was a mannequin wearing a KKK outfit in the corner. He was a satellite friend who I knew, but didn't know well. I've never come down with food poisoning so fast before. I got the fuck out of there. I was able to play sick for a couple days but it was super awkward ghosting him being we had the same friends. For the longest time I didn't go places he was at. She showed me a picture of herself with some stripper and repeatedly talked about how beautiful his dick was. I'm not exactly lacking myself, but I'm certainly not that guy. It felt weird and I felt like I'd be better off pursuing other options. WTF was the point of that? What a weirdo. I went on a date with a man who I'd previously met on a night out. He seemed nice so I was looking forward to the evening. We went for a meal first and as we were talking I kept noticing he kept doing this weird shoulder twitch. I don't know if he was even aware he was doing it but it quickly started to be annoying as I couldn't keep my eyes off his shoulder. He then started telling me a story of how he used to be in the army and his wife, who was also in the army, had been murdered. They had a child together and he had brought her up on his own. This was a horrific story and sat in stunned silence as I just didn't know what to say other than I was sorry that had happened. After the meal we went to have a drink in a pub across from the restaurant. He immediately picked out a bloke in a red top and started saying he shouldn't be around here because it wasn't his territory. He then pulled a knuckle duster out of his pocket and put it on his hand all while staring at this bloke who was just having fun with his friends and hadn't once looked over. The red flags were literally smacking me in the face so I made some excuses and left. I only dared tell him by text that I didn't want another date. A guy cracked a joke about feeding my cat arsenic. I didn't even finish the date, just got up and left. How in the hell is that remotely funny?